When you visit Unity of Houston, you'll find a spiritual community, a church where you can connect and learn and grow with a progressive approach to Christianity. At Unity, we welcome you no matter what your beliefs. You'll find a teaching, loving, inspiring experience as we help each other be all we're created to be. Check us out. We'd love to have you. Find us online at unityhouston.org, and remember, life is meant to be good.
From Unity of Houston, Texas, this is The Awakened Life with Reverend Howard Caesar. Unity is a non-denominational spiritual community providing a positive, practical, and progressive approach to Christianity. Let's join the service in progress now with Reverend Howard Caesar.
So how many of you have a mug that you drink your coffee or your tea out of, a special mug that's kind of yours that you've picked out, you know? Okay, there's a lot of mugs out there, and some of them have little sayings on them. And so it kind of characterizes a little bit about ourselves. And so there are so many different statements on different mugs. I wanted to share you just a few that may reflect, you know, some people's personality. I don't know what it says on your mug, but here's a couple of them. One of them says, "I never use my turn signal. It's nobody's business where I'm going." Another one is, "If life's a journey, mine is between the break room and my office." Another one is, "When I get a headache, I take 2 aspirin and keep away from children, just like it says on the bottle." And this would be obvious on some cup. "I drink coffee for your protection." And the last one I'll share with you, "I try to avoid things that make me fat, like scales, mirrors, and photographs." And actually that one leads me into our talk today, as it's about mirrors, okay? The world is a house of mirrors. The world is a house of mirrors. And life, this physical world that we're in, is basically about experiencing and seeing ourselves reflected everywhere, and oftentimes in everyone and everything, and then learning from that. To come from the knowing that the principle is that the world is mirrors all around, and people are mirroring things that we can begin to become aware of and notice and make shifts. It's the idea that everywhere I go, I get to meet myself, you know. Everything we say, and this is the teaching, everything moves from center to circumference, from within out. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. And so, therefore, if one knows these principles, it's very hard to blame anyone or anything for our unhappiness. We have to make the change. We can't, you know, live in victimhood, because essentially we have the opportunity and the power to change and alter things from within out. We can choose again. We can choose higher. We can choose to embrace that which is closer to our true nature and the truth that sets us free. And so the world is a house of mirrors. Have you ever been to a state fair or a county fair or a fairgrounds where they had, you know, rides and games, and, you know, they might have stuff where you're throwing darts at balloons and getting teddy bears and all that kind of thing, but they also may have had a place. I mean, I've been to a few, I don't know recently, but they actually have a house of mirrors. You been to one of those? And they have an entrance and they have an exit, and you go in and there are mirrors everywhere. And basically you're bumping into mirrors, and you're having a difficult time finding your way even to the exit, bumping into walls, and all these images coming at you of yourself. And sometimes the images are distorted because they have mirrors in there that are concave and in different shapes. So then all of a sudden, sometimes you're really thin, and sometimes you're really big, and sometimes big parts of your body are big. And you know, you ever been to those? Don't look at me strange. You know, that's a house of mirrors. And kids, when we're young, we love them. You know, we go in and we're laughing and having a good time. You know, we're looking, seeing ourselves in this distorted, crazy way, and it's fun because we know that it's not accurate, it's not true. These mirrors, what it's reflecting back to us. So as children, mirrors don't bother us usually, but as we get older and as we become more of an adult, the mirror and the mirrors in our lives can become more a mixture of friend and foe. It just depends for all of us, really. Some of you I know go to the gym and you work out. I go as much as I can, work into my schedule, and I go with some regularity. And so the place that I go, the gym, there are mirrors everywhere. Ever been to these gyms? You know, there are mirrors everywhere. You can't hardly move a muscle without, there you are, you know. And on the second floor of the gym that I work at is where the weightlifting place is. And so it's a wall of mirrors, and there are benches, and everyone faces the mirrors. So they're doing, you know, and they're all these things, and then when they're done, they're strutting. You know, it's pretty, I go over in that area, not to lift weights, just to watch these guys and gals. You know, it's pretty amazing. And then in the locker room, in our locker room, there's this long wall of sinks where people can shave and all of that. And then, of course, there's mirrors, a wall of mirrors with sinks there. And heading to the shower, you have to walk by all these mirrors. And so everyone's, you know, doing a lot of, every once in a while somebody goes, and scare themselves, you know. Just depends on, you know, where they're at, how they're feeling about themselves that day. And I share that not to make fun, I think, of anyone. I fault no one for looking in the mirrors, and I fault no one for lifting weights or getting big muscles and all of that. That's great. It's a sport in itself, but I just share it from the standpoint it's human nature to look into the mirror, because what are we doing? We're judging. We're evaluating, you know, what we see, whether we like it or don't like it, and how much we like it or how much we don't like it. And usually, you know, we basically come to the place where it's either not good enough, often is. It's okay, I'm getting a little bit of shape here, a little bulk. It's not good enough. I've got to pump some more iron. Or I'm not thin enough, or I'm not this enough, or that enough. And it often becomes that message. As one person said about a time looking in the mirror in their home, the girl in the mirror wasn't who I wanted to be, and her life wasn't one I wanted to have. That's a real sad place to be. Some people have been there when they look in the mirror. And, you know, the truth is that we can fixate on form sometimes and what we see. One person counseled another saying, a beautiful woman should break her mirror early. And you know what that means? It means that you can't remain attached to the form of what you see. You know, physical beauty only being the value you bring. Things will change and shift. That there's a beauty that runs deeper than form itself. One must always learn in any stage of life at some point to see beyond form and see something deeper that lives in you, that is your essence, that is basically at the level of heart and soul and beingness. You see? There's nothing wrong with looking good in the physical form, that's wonderful, but you have to know that the real you is inside, because that form is going to shift and change. You have to love it beyond. There's a lady that I read a quote about. This lady was from India, and I love the quote so much that I Googled her, as I didn't recognize the name, and had never come across it. And her name was Manpreet Kaur. So again, she was born in India, and she was an Indian professional weightlifter. And she basically won the gold medal in the National Weightlifting Championships in 2013. She also broke a record and won the championship in the shot putting contest, championship. And so when I looked her up in Google, it was telling me these things about her, and then it had a link to go to photographs and images of her. So I went there, and it brought up over 100 images of her, and pictures and photographs from a few that were when she was a child, but most of them were through adulthood. And I'm telling you, I was blown away by the variation of pictures of her. There were times when she was husky, and even her face was puffy, you know, reflecting that she was weighty because she had been lifting weights. And then there were other pictures where she actually was in a swimming suit, where the thing, you know, like she had won a swimsuit contest and was holding flowers. She had won a beauty contest, really thinned face. I could hardly believe that this was the same person, all the variations. There were numerous pictures where she didn't look all that great. And there were numerous pictures where she looked amazing, sheer beauty, physical beauty. And I share all that with you because here's the quote that impacted me first. Here's what she said. Always remember that you are the most beautiful woman in the world. Your weight, your height, your eyes, your scars, your idiosyncrasies, your complexion, and your sartorial choices have nothing to do with beauty. The mirror lies, darling. It does, she says. Your heart is where all the beauty rests. And of course, it's your smile that sprinkles a dash of magic. The world is a better place because of your gorgeous smile. Never walk out without a smile on your face, a zing in your step, and a high dose of faith in your heart. Isn't that a great? She was, had all these different images and variations in which she showed up in form. But she said, hey, none of that is beauty or something other than beauty. It's all from within. And that's something we have to know and realize. What we look in the mirror, the physical mirror, when we stand before each day, whether we shave or are putting on makeup, we're more than that. We teach that we are more than form. The truth of us is found when we look within at a deeper level. And the question to ask ourselves probably is, well, when you look into the mirror, do you look at yourself or do you look for yourself, for the real you behind the image? Are you looking for yourself to see the something that is the being, that is the eternal, that is of God, that lives and moves and has its being, that's beyond that form? That's who we are, beyond the form. And there is this image and likeness that we've been created in, of course, the image and likeness of God, and that is beyond form. It's talking about more than form. It's the perfect part of us that contains the perfection of God, the divine blueprint that is beyond whatever it is we may see when we look into the mirror. And so most importantly, one must realize that we are love. God is love. We are made in the image and after the likeness of love. So whatever we see when we stand in front of the mirror, we have to love the essence of that beyond the form. I don't care how good or not good it looks, or what's your assessment or your evaluation or your critique, you have to love that. In Romans, Paul, the Apostle Paul says, "For I am persuaded that neither death nor life, nor angels nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other created thing shall be able to separate us from the love of God." Except, he doesn't add this, I do, except you. That's the only thing that can separate you from the love of God. It's constant, consistent, and always there. So no mirror or no created thing, as he's saying, height, depth, whatever, shall be able to separate us from love and our lovability. And we're always assessing our lovability. You see, that's the dynamic. You should never stop loving the being that you see in the mirror. It should be unconditional. We should get to that, and we should identify more and more with the true identity of who we are. That is the essence beyond the form. We should not stop loving ourselves. In 1 Corinthians 13, that great message that Paul delivers on love, 13 of 1 Corinthians, he says, love never fails. And so life, really, he's saying, is a house of mirrors that is reflecting back to us a love. And we determine basically whether we live from that love or whether we deny that love of ourselves. The passage goes on, and it's pretty powerful. It starts with love never fails, and then it says, for we know in part, because we don't know the whole of things, we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when that which is perfect has come, then that which is in part will be done away. When I was a child, I spoke, I understood, I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. And this is where it gets important. For now, right now, wherever we are in our evolution spiritually, for now we see in a mirror dimly. It's skewed. It's not the truth. But then, face to face, then is at some point you will awaken to knowing the truth of who you really are and are held to be. Now, he says, I know in part, but then I shall know just as I also am known. Get that? Then I shall know just as I also am known. Known by who? By the universe, folks. By God. By the truth. You shall be known. You are already known in the mind of God as whole and complete and lovable. It's we that establishes the things that stand in the way in which we don't get to feel lovable. We deny it, no one else. It's us. So important to get that. Faith, hope, love, the greatest of these is love. So what is the perfect part? The perfect part that it's talking about is really the Christ. The word Christ is another word for love. Moses brought the law. Christ brought love with the law. And Christ reflected in all that he did the love of God, that God is love. It was Paul, the apostle, who states in Colossians, Christ is all. Christ is in all. In all. Paul in another place said, that's the mystery which has been hidden for ages and generations, which is Christ in you, your hope of glory. There's a perfect part that you're moving through beyond the dimmed mirror that you see of yourself. That's where we're headed. Jesus, you know, when we identify with that part of ourselves, we see, you know, when I identify in moments that I have, that dimension of the essence, then I see the essence in others. It's easier to see if I know it is in myself. And Jesus taught this, you know. We see it everywhere then. Jesus asked the disciples, who do men or others say that I am? And they answered, John the Baptist, Elijah, Jeremiah, one of the prophets. Then he asks after that, well, but now who do you say that I am? And Peter blurts out, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus said, blessed are you. He was happy with Peter because he didn't get that from looking and seeing form. In fact, Jesus said, blessed are you, for flesh and blood has not revealed it to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And where did Jesus say heaven is? Kingdom of heaven is within you. So there was a dimension within Peter that saw the truth, and that was blessed by Jesus. So looking in the mirror, flesh and blood does not reveal who you really are, but you are to know yourself as you are also already known by the mind of God, by the universe itself, by the truth that lives in this universe. Have you ever noticed young babies tend not to smile at themselves in a mirror, at least for a while? You know, they stare at themselves. I have a 10-week-old grandchild, Ellie Grace. And so when I'm holding her, I take her always near a mirror and looks, and then she just stares. I've had two others who's now 4 and 7 years old, and I would always do that with them too. They'd look in the mirror, never a smile, always stare for a period of time. Why is that? Because they don't recognize themselves. They don't think of themselves as a body. They have not thought of themselves yet as form. They're still living in the space of formlessness, that's who they are, that they're more than this form. There's still so much of spirit from where they have come. Now, once they're about 12 months to 18 months old, then they become more identifying with form, and they become more self-conscious. And as a result, they may begin to seek attention or avoid it. We call that shy. It's true. And then, more and more, as a child, in varying degrees, we learn fear, and we learn to judge ourselves, and we begin to lose ourselves to the degree that we fall into fear and judgment. Now, y'all are familiar with Louise Hay, and she's an amazing lady. She's done great work in the world. She's authored some wonderful books. You've heard of Hay House as a publisher. This lady has been around a while and done a great work. And if you don't know who she is, you need to look into her. But she's about healing and transformation and really is a new thought, amazing lady. Anyway, when she was 9 years old, it was the first time she tried to take her life. 9 years old. And the way she did it was she ate some poison berries. She had learned from adults that if you eat these berries, it'll kill you. So she made the attempt. She didn't succeed. And when asked why she tried to take her life, she said, "I didn't feel lovable." And she tells the story that her parents divorced, and then her mother remarried a man who abused her mother and Louise herself, physically and sexually, that there was violence in the house all the time. And then when she was a teenager, her neighbor raped her. He went to jail for 16 years, but it left her a mess, and she left home at age 15, trying to figure it all out. She wanted to leave the violence that was in the home, and things went badly because she was starved for love. And as she puts it, she was a magnet for abuse. And she went to bed with anyone who was nice to her. Eventually became pregnant, very young age. Had to give the child up because she realized, I couldn't take care of myself. How could I take care of a child? And Louise tells it that, she was raised not as, not to say she was a victim, but she said she was raised by two people who didn't feel lovable. And so they weren't able to teach her. They weren't able to teach her that she was lovable. So the idea, I'm not lovable, is something we all have in varying degrees, have had that, and it becomes basically a fear. And it's just a story in our mind, but it's still there. And to the degree that we have it, is to the degree that we move away from ourselves, our true self, and we forget who we really are. And it's sad. We need to make the journey back. There's a guy named Anthony Hinks who says, we spend so long trying to be what other people want that when we look in the mirror, we see a stranger. Another one put it this way, I think this is kind of humorous. He said, hell, I barely know myself these days. I brush my teeth and look in the mirror and think, who is this guy taking care of my oral hygiene? So the fear that we are not lovable becomes the fear that we're not enough. One and the same almost, but it infects everything it can. And everyone has, to some degree, I'm not enough. I've lived with I'm not enough a lot in many ways, and I won't get into it now, but believe me, I have. Whether people have, I'm not intelligent enough, I'm not educated enough, I'm not attractive enough, I'm not thin enough, I'm not successful enough, whatever it might be. There's a guy named Auden. He said, every man carries with him through life a mirror as unique and impossible to get rid of as his shadow. There's a mirror. We're looking at ourselves, sometimes not in favorable ways, mostly. So life mirrors to all of us in ways that we're not loving ourselves. God wants to love us, life wants to love us, but we block it. So our mind actually mirrors back to us a bit of life. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind, so we will see things happening in our world that reflect our consciousness, reflect our mind. The world, how we see the world, and that perception will feed back to us as a mirror. It reflects our consciousness. We see things not as they are, but as we are. Relationships are another big mirror, and the rule in relationships is that whether we bring whatever we bring in consciousness to a relationship is going to be pretty much what we will experience. We bring ourselves, we take ourselves with us wherever we go. And so all of our energies of our past, whether it's our distrusts, our past issues, our charges, our unhealed issues or conflicts, all of that, as well as the good stuff and the things we have healed, are mixed and mingled together, and we bring that to the relationship. And the more a person believes and feels that they are unlovable, the harder that person makes it for others to love them. You understand? It's very hard to love a person who just cannot love themselves or thinks they're not lovable. It just doesn't break through the barrier. It's so hard. Someone has been quoted to say, "For I do not exist, there exist but the thousands of mirrors that reflect me, and every acquaintance I make, the population of phantoms resembling me increases." Interesting. So by that, the people that I judge or don't like are actually reflecting a part of me because I'm projecting it out. Course in Miracles says perception is a mirror, not a fact. And what I look on is my state of mind reflected outward. Talking about perception, it says it is the witness to your state of mind. the outside picture of an inward condition. As a man thinketh, so does he perceive. Therefore, seek not to change the world, but choose to change your mind about the world. So what helped Louise Hay? Well, she basically did what she's called mirror work, and applying the mirror principle, and it's just like it sounds. She would sit in front of a mirror and she would say, "I love you, Louise." She didn't believe it, of course, and it was a great deal of resistance. She would cry, she would feel horrible going through it, but she'd allow it to break up, and she would persist and stay with it, and eventually get more and more solid that "I love you," and a love would come through. And all the resistance, all the criticizing, all the self-talk would begin to fade and become less powerful and less strong. She even said, "I am beautiful and everybody loves me." Again, she didn't believe it at first, but she noticed that people treated her better as she locked into that, because she was now reflected. People love me, and they were kinder. It was amazing how I experienced people the way they were to me, very different. So whenever you look in the mirror, it's not the mirror that's judging you, it's you that is judging you. One lady had notes she'd put on the mirror, and they were uplifting boosters. She said, "Today is special. Make today count. You are wonderful. You are whatever." And then in the middle, she had a note that said, "Look at all the other notes." And so we should all be aware of whether we are reflecting more the living in our head or the living in our heart. If we're living in our heads a lot, we're into judgment, we're criticizing, we're analyzing, and basically that's all stuff about us. If we're living from our heart more and more, then we're really coming from love. We're coming from the place where we get more and more to love ourselves, and in doing so, we will then love others and let love in, and life becomes so much happier, so much richer, so much fuller, because the universe and God is trying to love you through all these ways, if we will simply lay down the blocks. When you look in the mirror, remember that your light outshines your flaws, and always will. Don't hide your light. Don't cover it up, as Jesus said. Go be a light in the world. God bless you all.
Thank you for joining us for today's message. We invite you to be with us again next Sunday. Unity is inclusive, welcoming people of all walks of life in dignity and love. We believe that love, strength, and goodness dwells within you. May we all live in unity with God, humanity, and all of God's creation. And remember, as Reverend Caesar says, life is meant to be good.
When you visit Unity of Houston, you'll find a spiritual community, a church where you can connect and learn and grow with a progressive approach to Christianity. At Unity, we welcome you no matter what your beliefs. You'll find a teaching, loving, inspiring experience as we help each other be all we're created to be. Check us out. We'd love to have you. Find us online at unityhouston.org, and remember, life is meant to be good.